here. We do not have a separate ministry that deals with NGOs because we know they are a non-governmental organization, but nevertheless, they are still overseen, I think, by some government institution. I think it is
Ministry of Local
Ministry of
Land.
Local Government. Yes. So the Ministry of Finance is here. A representative of the Ministry of Finance, Mr. Dr. Fadera, is here. I think the Director of Sustainable Development.
The Director of Development Planning.
Development Planning, exactly. Development Planning. So you see the link. We are responsible, an environment committee overseeing sustainable development. So this is why you are here also. So we are going to listen to you. We would expect that you also brief us about possible ways of collaboration with this committee. So this is why we invite you here. I think I want to start with the Director of Sustainable Development. Oh, yeah, okay, yes, okay, thank you for reminding me. So we are going to start with the Director of Sustainable Development, but before we do that, I think we need to go through the agenda items. We begin, of course, we are doing the prayers, but before we allow you to start, before we give you the floor, we will, as protocol demands, start with a short introduction, because I think right from the beginning it is appropriate that we know who is who. So because this is going to be the engagement, we need to engage more. So it is absolutely important that we introduce ourselves so that next time when we meet, outside the National Assembly, we will know who is who. Beginning with my own self, I'm Honorable Yaya Kasama, the National Assembly member for Kiang East, and also the chairman of the Select Committee on Environment, Sustainable Development, and NGO Affairs.
I am Honorable Kebaro, member for Congo South, and also a member of the committee.
I am Honorable Sawal, member for US. I am Lamin Imani, principal committee clerk.
Okay, so good morning, honorable members. So my name is Sering Falwinjari. I work at the Office of the President with the Directorate of Sustainable Development, Directorate of
Strategic
Policy and Delivery, but I'm now designated as advisor to the President and Vice President on development. So my designation is National Development Advisor in the Office of the President.
Okay, my name is Alaji Federa. I am Director of Development Planning at the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs.
My name is Ali Ulum. I'm the Director General of the Department of Strategic Policy and Delivery.
Good morning. My name is Richard Gomez, Principal Planner, Directorate of Development Planning, Ministry of Finance.
I think I can remember meeting you in the assembly here.
Yes, the last time I came, I was representing Yangaro.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Thank you for that brief introduction. Our committee is about 12 members large. We are that large, but unfortunately, some of our committee members also belong to other committees. They have rolled out outside basically the health committee. Others, like Honorable Barrow said, attending a workshop somewhere. So we are only 3. But of course, our rules requires that the quorum is 3. If you have a quorum, we can start business. So we are fine with 3 or 6. So I would like to give the floor to the Director of Sustainable Development.
It's development.
Development planning.
Development planning.
Development plan, yeah?
Okay.
Yes, please.
All right, thank you very much, Honorable Chair and members of this distinguished Select Committee on Environment, Sustainable Development, and NGO Affairs. So I introduce myself. I'm Director of Development Planning at the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs. I think just want to recall that the Ministry of Finance is also responsible for coordinating national development planning in the Gambia. Previously we had separate institutional arrangements where we don't have to go very far in history, but recently we had the National Planning Commission, which was established then by an act of the National Assembly, and it was disbanded, and then turned into a Ministry of Economic Planning and Industrial Development, and decision was taken in 2012 to merge that ministry with the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs. So the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs is now responsible for coordinating national development planning. And this also exists in some other countries where, let's say, planning is within the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs. In others, you may have a separate Ministry of Planning. In others, like in Ghana, you may have a ministry, you may have a National Planning Commission. So in terms of what we have been doing, recall we had, following the change in government in 2016, the government elaborated the National Development Plan 2018 to 2021. And that was coordinated by the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, basically through the Directorate of Development Planning as a technical unit. Since then, as provided for in the since the formulation of that plan, it was under implementation, and there was a first annual progress review for its implementation for the period 2018, and then in 2020 we finalized early 2021, we finalized the midterm evaluation of the plan. This was delayed because of the COVID-19 pandemic. You know that evaluations are supposed to be participatory and inclusive, but because of the restrictions imposed during the COVID pandemic, it wasn't possible to initiate the midterm evaluation very early. But in early 2021, we were able to finalize the midterm evaluation of the National Development Plan. And before then, we did an evaluation of the long-term Vision 2020. Remember, in 1996, the Gambia formulated the Vision 2020, which has the overarching objective of the country attaining middle income status by 2020. And we know it has become good practice in many developing countries for countries to have a long-term vision that will guide several medium-term development plans. So the fact that the long-term vision came to an end in 2020, we felt in order to initiate the process of another long-term vision, we need to at least do some kind of evaluation to know what has been achieved, what the challenges are, and what we can learn from the formulation process of that long-term vision. So the evaluation of Vision 2020 was also done. Because of COVID, again, we were supposed by now probably to have a new medium-term development plan, because the National Development Plan was supposed to come to an end in 2021. But because of the COVID-19 pandemic and our inability to finalize the midterm evaluation, as well as be able to formulate a successor National Development Plan in time, the decision was taken to extend the National Development Plan to end of this year, that is end 2022, to allow government to elaborate a new medium-term development plan. So that process of elaborating a new medium-term development plan has started late last year. We're trying to bring a team together of consultants, as well as set up some of the necessary institutional arrangements for that formulation. And decision was also taken that we formulate a long-term vision called the long-term development vision. And the medium-term development plan is the Green Recovery Focused National Development Plan, which will be for the period 2023 to 2027, a 5-year plan. As we speak, we've been able to conduct consultations on both plans, that's the long-term development vision and the recovery focused national development plan, across the length and breadth of this country. That means we've been able to hold consultations in all the 120 wards of this country, as well as in all local government areas across the country. So that aspect of the consultation has been completed. And I think this is the first time in recent memory, from the feedback that we got from the field, that government has been able to consult stakeholders on overall national development at the level of the wards. The last time when we were doing the consultations was just at the level of the district. So this time around, we've gone lower to the lowest administrative level, which is the ward level, to consult with stakeholders. And this consultation included consultations with women, with the Council of Elders, with youth, with children, persons with disability, civil society organizations, the private sector, and at the level of the local government areas, also with the technical advisory committees, and at the ward level with the multidisciplinary facilitation teams. At the national level, bulk of the consultations have also been done. We were trying to have at least engagement with the National Assembly, but this was at a time when National Assembly elections were taking place. So, and the previous National Assembly was dissolved. So it wasn't possible to have maybe engagement with the National Assembly and inform them to the process. But we were able to have meeting with the inter-party committee, so that at least we were able to have discussions with them, and they also brief on where we were at that level. At the national level, we've been able to have consultations with civil society, with the private sector, with representative of women, with ministries, departments, and agencies, our development partners, persons living with disability, etc. And we are trying to have a second round of to further deepen some of those discussions. Like we have further consultations planned with academia, also with the private sector, civil society, farmer organization, and women for next week. So this is where we are. And just last week, that is last Friday, we launched the sector working groups. Sector working groups basically are the technical experts in the ministries, departments, and agencies, and also participants from civil society as well as the private sector. And these sector working groups are going to be chaired by the permanent secretaries of the various ministries, departments, and agencies. With the various ministries, departments, and agencies. So as we speak, the sector working groups have been launched, and we envisage them starting their work immediately after the Eid break. So basically their role will be, given all the information that we have from this regional ward level consultations at national levels, surveys that have been done, sector strategies, sector policies, they will analyze all this as technicians, technical experts in their various fields, and be able to come up with proposals as to the priorities in the various areas of our development endeavor. And this will feed into the initial zero draft of the new national development plan and the long-term vision, which will be subjected to various reviews until it is finally validated and approved as the national development plan, and later in the year, the long-term development vision for this country. So in terms of the processes, this is where we are in terms of the planning processes. And before I conclude, it is important to note that during these processes, we also use this as an opportunity to mainstream our international commitments as far as internationally agreed development goals are concerned, such as the Sustainable Development Goals, the AU Agenda 2063, and even the ECOWAS Vision 2030, and other agreed development agenda that the Gambia has signed on to. Because best practice is many countries in the developing world mainstream these internationally agreed development goals into their planning processes. So that at the end of the day, as you are implementing your national development plans, which will inform the sector strategic plans and the regional development plans, you will have mainstream this internationally agreed development agenda. And you will also be able to use that as an opportunity to report on progress. And as we speak, just to end, the Gambia has finalized its second voluntary national review of the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, which will be presented at the high-level political forum of the United Nations in July this year. That is basically this month, actually on the 12th of July. So this is where we stand, and we already have a work plan, and we envisage that maybe initial drafts of the recovery-focused national development plan, which will help us address issues relating to the impact of COVID-19, as well as the impact of climate change, how we make our development greener, resilient, and more sustainable. Some of the issues that we are trying to grapple with and to include them into our development plan. So for now, I thank you, since some of our colleagues are pressed and they have to travel outside the Greater Banjul area for other. I will for now stop here. If there's any need for clarification, I can always come back later. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you for that concise presentation. If you have any questions or any issues that you want to ask the question.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Patel.
Yes.
Your well-done explanation is you made mention of when around the consultation for this 124.
Yes. Yeah. Mm.
And then you said this is the first time of such thing to happen.
Yeah, to do that kind of consultations at ward level.
Yes.
Yes.
This is the first time. So how was the response of this group that you met? According to you said you met women's groups and the chiefs. How was the response? How would they feel when they saw you for the first time?
Okay, I think when we did, because the last time I told you, like, the consultations was at the level of the districts. But even then, that was appreciated, because I could remember going into one of the districts in Sandu, and they were able to tell us that this is the first time that they've been consulted on overall national development issues. Okay, and they really appreciate it, because they said when you hold some of these consultations at regional level, participation is relatively limited, because it's not And in terms of the facilitator, the team that went out there, we tried as much as possible that these are drawn from across government, mainly development planners in the various ministries, departments, and agencies. So we had participants drawn from infrastructure, like the Ministry of Infrastructure, participants from the Ministry of Gender, from Education, etc. And we put them into different groups. So I think the advantage was it gave them an opportunity, because most of the time, most of them are based, their headquarters are here, and apart from maybe limited trek, some of them have never probably visited some of those parts of the country. So this gave them an opportunity, apart from hearing from those people, but also experiencing the environment in which those people live. And that is good for their capacities and their appreciation of development issues in their various areas. So if somebody from education goes and all that, and some of the, consultations were held in the schools, apart from the reports that he sees on paper, he will be able to know how the schools look like in some parts of the Gambia. So if we talk about access to electricity, like some will tell you, yes, we have electricity, but the issue is the affordability, especially in some of the provincial areas.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable.
Yeah, thank you very much for the updates, and then I think a lot has happened over the last few months. But my concern is the And I think another important area that we need to be involved in this thing is the involvement of the community radio stations that are now spread in all the regions in the country. They are doing a lot of dissemination development programs that will help people to better understand these things and enable them to understand why we are doing these things. And these agreed plans are statutory development plans that we as a crucial moments for us as a nation. The Gambia is taking up the presidency of the ECOWAS Commission in a month, not tomorrow. The president is going to be, the Gambia is going to head it, Dr. Umar Toure is going to head the ECOWAS Commission. And that is very key for the Gambia. So what do we need to do and to ensure that we do the groundwork and help him to implement his manifesto and also be able to look at some of the issues that are confronting the sub-region as members and also heading the commission. The other thing is the time frame that you set up for the development of the validation of the framework that is going to happen. And I think we need to make sure that we at all times try to meet the timelines that we set for ourselves. Because if we meet them, then it means we have to go back again, redo everything, and in that process, we will also be more delayed. So I think those are important. And like Serin Fado, I think we've been talking about the National Voluntary Review, which has been talked about for the last couple of years, 2 years now, and then that is coming up. So how prepared are we? And then that impact also need to be well documented, and so that the people know the outcome of those things, because it is also very important. Sometimes the involvement of people in those areas, when it comes, the dissemination and implementation of the analysis and also the programs that are set and what is lacking. So I think those are areas that we need to look into. And so I have no doubt that Honorable has been with the civil society and he has been in this with the UN system and all these things. So that's a key comparative advantage for us as a country. So I think the involvement of the ordinary citizens are important. So once again, we want to thank you for this, and I think it is also very important at the sub-regional level and also at the AU level, and then taking it forward to the United Nations. Thanks for the programs that we are doing, and we want to have that continued engagement as the committee is responsible of the environment, sustainable development, and NGOs, and those are very big areas that are doing a lot of good work in this country. So we need to be able to showcase the work that we are doing. Thank you for the paper, and then we will continue the discussions as we go ahead. And this is the media meeting. This committee will be responsible of these sectors for the next 5 years. So it's the beginning, and then that's why we want to have a briefing session with all the institutions, department, and agencies that fall under our purview to start rolling out some initiatives that we want to do. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, if I can just briefly comment. I think we take note of the very important issues that you have raised, because that's really very important. And those are some of the things that we are also thinking about. And that is why, in terms of the work of the sector working groups, we collaborated very closely with the Office of the President, the Secretary General, because she's the head of the civil service and the permanent secretaries are directly answerable to her, so that at least she will convene the launching and will really encourage all the permanent secretaries to take this work very seriously, because at the end of it, they're the board controllers in the ministries, and so they have the final decision on how funds are spent and what priorities are negotiated at the level of the budget. And I think the meeting was really the launching was well attended by many of the permanent secretaries, and I think it has really set a very strong foundation for the work of the sector working groups on how we continue to engage all the stakeholders we're trying to see. And I think to be candid, that has been one of the weaknesses of the current national development plan, because you go out there, the level of awareness among the citizenry was relatively limited. So we're looking at all these options that you're talking about. Like we have been using the community radio stations in the outreach during the voluntary national review, this current one that has just been finalized and is going to be presented. Or even in 2020 to put out, and it has really added value. So we're trying to see how we engage with journalists, including this community radio station, so that as this is formulated, they have an insight into how it is formulated, because that's important as they communicate. But once it is finalized, they have a good understanding of it, and they will be able to disseminate it. We're also looking at how probably some of these traditional communicators, like the Kanyalan groups and all that, could be at some point engaged, so that they have an understanding, because the extent to which we successfully implement some of these plans, to a large extent also hinge on people's understanding and their appreciation of what the plan is all about, how they're going to benefit from its implementation, but also importantly, how they take part in its implementation and contribute to it. And in terms of the civil society, we've had engagements with them, and if anything, we have another second round of engagement with them, and we want to make sure that they make proposals for their participation in the different sector working groups. So when we talk about education, Tango and its members will make proposals to say NGO, CSOX are active in this area, and we want them to participate in the technical work of the sector working groups to be able to arrive at the priorities. Same thing for the private sector. So we will continue to do that, and the VNR would continue to speak to that. But we did engage the civil society, apart from at the regional level, but also at the national level. And as we speak, they're even going to be part of the delegation that will present the VNR at the high-level political forum. So we thank you very much for your kind attention.
Okay, just before we give it to Mr. Ferreira, it was the Vision 2020 National Development Plan, and now elaborating a new development plan has started. The immediate basis of this new development plan, if I may say, I think is the National Development Plan. Yes. How do you assess the success so far of the National Development Plan, and what challenges did you face? I think because if you are thinking of a new development plan, I think it's also important to look back at some of the challenges of the National Development Plan. Some of the challenges do not, or difficulties that you may have come across during the implementation of National Development Plan do not surface again. So what are the successes so far, and how do you intend to deal with any challenges that may come up?
Thank you very much. Like I indicated, a midterm evaluation of the National Development Plan was done and finalized in 2021 to assess the level of implementation of the National Development Plan, what progress were registered, and what the challenges are. And this was done by independent consultants in the sense that it is good when you're evaluating to have at least some kind of independence to it, so that it's not what same institutional organization planning, or also going beyond just monitoring to evaluating itself. So when the evaluation was done, like of the different outcomes, about 169 outcomes, the evaluation found out that about 60% of those outcomes were either achieved as at end December 2020, or if that trajectory continues, are on track to be achieved by end 2021. That's about 60%. But broadly, and I'm speaking again broadly, but we have this report, and if the committees would desire, it's even public document. It's on the website of the ministry, but could also be made available. And I think the summary of some of these findings have also been tabled, or have also been communicated to the National Assembly, in the sense that the ministers have, we've done briefing for the ministers in some of their engagement with the National Assembly. But one thing that has been found out is that COVID-19 pandemic did have significant negative impact on the attainment of our goals as far as the National Development Plan is concerned. Because when we did the first annual progress review for 2018, for example, significant progress was made in the area of tourism, the number of arrivals. But a few years down the line, by end 2020, with COVID, like the tourism industry has basically ground to a halt. You see, we had very few tourism arrivals and all that, and that would not only impact on arrival figures, but also tourism's contribution to GDP and also employment of those who are engaged in the sector. It has also affected education in terms of the number of contact hours, because we know like schools have been closed for an extended period. The mechanisms that government tried to put in place, that virtual lessons on television, radio lessons and all that, it has been found out that that was not as effective as face-to-face tuition, because some of the children will have challenges. You go to some communities, probably access to television is a problem. But even if you have television, to get those kids seated and to follow the lessons was a problem. Where, let's say, tertiary institutions, internet, we all know that internet is not what? Connections and all that vary across. Even if you are in the urban areas here, sometimes it's difficult for you to have good internet signals, much more if you are in some parts of provincial Gambia. So it has really affected education, some of the indicators on education. In the area of health, we know that was the first impact, and it has what, like morbidity, mortality, but also importantly, when some of the assessments are done later, probably it will have impact on what? On a vaccination coverage, because during this period, women have not been regularly going to health facilities with their kids to take what the routine immunization and all that. And these were areas that we have really been doing very well in before COVID. So these are some of the impact, and it has also affected food and nutritional security and income, because people lost what? People lost their job. The restriction in the number of hours business during the period also affected people's what? Incomes and all that. So it has affected incomes, employment, but also importantly, food security. And to try to address that, government came out with food relief, and my colleague here, we worked on it. But that we know would not be as adequate as when people are working for themselves, have full access to decent jobs and all that. So in summary, these were some of the findings of the midterm evaluation. And this will feed into the work of the sector working group, because you cannot just continue planning and you don't know the base that you are coming from. But also as part of their work, they're even supposed to extend this analysis beyond end 2020 to now, so that they will be able to, because they're the ones that we've negotiated all these results indicators to look at. When we talk about enrollment, that was the baseline. By end 2020, this was what was the case. Now, what is the case now? In the area of tourism, they will look at the indicators and try and update them, so that whatever we do will build upon at least the most recent analysis that is possible. And this will be informed by other surveys, such as the integrated household survey, which is being analyzed currently and finalized. So we really take note of that concern, that we just don't continue planning in cyber or in blindness without looking at the realities on the ground, the findings of some of these evaluations, assessments, and surveys. Thank you very much.
Yes, okay, so now, Mr. Senfano, please, you can have the floor now.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I know a lot of what I wanted to talk about, Alaji has already talked about, but I just want to look at the other aspect of the issue of the national development and sustainable development. Of course, it is the executive that is supposed to draw up the plans and implement them. But the National Assembly also has a very big and critical role to play in this. As we develop the plan, we are also looking at doing the implementation framework for the NDP. And there are two key areas where we would need the support and guidance of the National Assembly. One is in the area of the governance and oversight of the overall process. And the second is the putting of some performance monitoring mechanisms and also assessing progress. Because at the end of the day, somebody has to be held accountable for what the plans are. Of course, you repeatedly asked Alain to what extent did we realize objectives of the last National Development Plan. And I believe we have to have a mechanism within Parliament to be able to do that on a consistent basis. This is one of the key roles that National Assembly members can play in the implementation of the NDP. Of course, Honorable Barrow knows we've worked together quite well on this, where we have tried to set up what we call parliamentary caucuses on SDGs in the National Assembly. The other time, while she was majority leader, we had worked on this. I'm not sure to what extent this is still going on, but we would encourage the National Assembly to really come up with this. Because when you look at the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, it is not just this committee. Health is an important aspect of the Sustainable Development Agenda. Agriculture is, almost all the committees within the National Assembly are very critical. And we would be willing to work with this committee to see how to expand engagement on the Sustainable Development Goals within the National Assembly. Of course, this would require awareness creation and sensitization amongst your members, but also building capacity as well, or institutional strengthening, so that this can take place more. And I think maybe we need to go beyond just the national level to also look at regional and continental level. At the level of ECOWAS, there's been quite a lot of work with Parliament, and also at the level of the Pan-African Parliament. And I'm saying all this because he knows I've been working at that level, and we've tried to establish what we call the network of African parliamentarians on the Sustainable Development Goals. So all these are things that I think we can help to sort of support in and help bridge the gap between the executive and the legislature as far as the implementation of sustainable development goals are. It is not just enough to be someone to ask what are you doing, but to have mechanisms in place by you where you can go out and actually see for yourself, assess for yourself what the executive is doing, and then come back and say, okay, we've gone out to the field, this is what you see vis-a-vis the plans, and we can have a much more meaningful and beneficial engagement. I just wanted to bring in what I said. Yes, we are at the receiving and we are being questioned, what are you doing? But on the other hand, also, I think we need that collaboration for you to have mechanisms in place to be able to have checks and balances on what the executive is doing on the sustainable development goals. And it knows with UNDP, all these other international organizations are ready to help and provide support, build the necessary capacity, provide the necessary institutional strengthening for us to be able to work with you on this. Thank you.
Honorable members, any questions? Sorry. No question.
Yeah, I think he mentioned 2 points. I think that we need to elaborate more on and see how best we can revive it. Yes, it was true. We tried to set this up and we had the parliamentary focus on MDGs. Then the deputy clerk responsible of legislative matters is the one who is leading that focus, and I think we need to. That's why you should have been part of this meeting, so that we need to revive that also and see how do we work towards that one also. And the network of parliamentarians, as he said, we have our representatives in all these regional parliamentary bodies. Members are already in PAP, coming back next week. We just come back from ECOWAS Parliament, and then our members in the ACP and EEC are also preparing to go there. So I think these are key areas that we need to. One of the key important things is how do we ensure that we follow up the mechanisms that are set up in the implementation of these programs. And there again, the commitment has to come back again. Whenever you are identified or selected to be part of these networks, because it is not only the Gambia that is sitting in this thing. So your participation and your involvement in these things are very key. So that's why all along I've been telling the Ministry of Finance that we need to make sure that our obligations to these statutory institutions are met, and because we are signatory to, if they are not met and we continue to be in areas, when you go there you will just only be a spectator, you will not be able to participate fully in the governance structures of those institutions, because you have not fulfilled your commitments as a nation. So these are very key. And I think one other important thing is the capacity building, which is very key. One of capacity building does not take participants anywhere, because these are continuous processes that we need to do. So we need to ensure that we do this capacity building not only internally, but it has to be done externally, so that we are able to look at some of the issues that are coming up from other areas, because best practices are very important, and they help you to be able to analyze, and also informed choices are given for your full participation. And as I said, I have no doubt in the capacities of Seren Falunjai has worked on this sustainable development before, and then up to the level of the United Nations. And we have done a lot of work with him when I was at Tango, being a representative of Civicus, which provides civil society organizations across the world. They are operating in over 193 countries, working on key instruments of like the development, the sustainable development goals. So I think having somebody at the level of the Office of the President coordinating those activities for the Gambia is an added advantage. What we need to do is to make sure that we use the expertise that we have and all the resources that are needed are released on time, and then timely frameworks that are drawn are implemented in full. So we will take it from there, and then maybe we'll have to engage Dan, the deputy clerk responsible for parliamentary affairs, and then see how best we can revive this committee and work forward. And I am very much particular about this voluntary, that is going to be a national review program that is going to be done, because that will showcase our work, and then we will be able to, if we are able to present it well, then we will be able to be there, and then we will share the same resources and also be in the same platform and arena with our colleagues in other parts of the region. So thank you so much for having time to come. I know it was not easy to try to coordinate because I was all the way in Abuja. The clerk was writing and said, can we please have, are you sure that we'll be able to have Serin Panda? I said, if he's in town, he'll definitely come. So once again, thank you for coming, and this is the beginning, and then maybe the committee clerk and the chairperson and the deputy clerk responsible of parliamentary affairs will work around these things, and which are very key in our development strive to work the agenda of the national development plan of this country. That will put out in a right book. So maybe I'll learn from the National Commission.
Yes.
Development Commission, yeah?
It's not development. Department for Strategic Policy and Delivery.
Yeah.
Yes. So basically, I think I will just add a rejoinder to what Mr. Njai and Mr. Fadera have said already. The mandate of the department is basically also an oversight function for the executive. We normally help the executive in ensuring that we monitor the projects and programs that are under the remit of the government. By doing that, there are 3 units within the department. One unit is responsible for policy analysis, that is the former PAU. The other unit is responsible for delivery. Delivery in the sense of making sure that government programs and projects are delivered on time. And then the other one is coordination, which support the executive in coordinating, especially the UN agencies programs in collaboration with government. So I think what Mr. Njai said, we will be very happy to be collaborating with your committee in that oversight function to support where necessary, give you technical assistance in ensuring you have functional systems that you can use to monitor also government programs and projects. Because the overall objective is to ensure that we deliver to our people. I think both the legislative and the executive, they have that responsibility to deliver to the Gambian people. So we at the department, we are ready to work with the committee in ensuring that we support wherever it's necessary. And part of the thing that we have been doing over the years, one of them is we've been able to basically aggregate the entire government policies into one database, which we will be launching very soon. Wherein if you go to any of, if you include in the National Assembly, any policy that you want to access, the click of a button, you can go to a ministry and know which policies are under this ministry. Are the policies current, the policies that they have, are they policies that are supposed to be updated, or the policies are they conflicting also? So we have that database that will be coming to share with the general public very soon, including the National Assembly. And then part of our work also has been to review cabinet papers to support the cabinet office in ensuring that sectors don't bring conflicting cabinet papers to cabinet. So government, to make sure we streamline our policies. We don't have one cabinet paper saying this, the next minute they bring out a cabinet paper that will conflict an existing cabinet decision. So those are some of the things that we've been doing, and then we've been working closely with Mr. Fadera. And if you are a keen, monitor of GRTS, you have this OGI, Open Governance Initiative, which with the PBF, the coordination unit, is working closely with the UNRC office for that Open Governance Initiative, where permanent secretaries will have 1 hour on GRTS to answer questions regarding their, the purview of their ministry, what they do, where are they in terms of development, so that people feel that the government at least is doing something to basically move us to the next level. So basically, I think we are not having much time, but I think if you will want, we can come back and then give you a more detailed brief on what our department is doing, so that we can have better collaboration. Because I believe if the two oversight institutions are working hand in glove, we will move the country from where we are. our objective is to move the country to the next level.
Yeah, sure.
And that can only be done if we work together. So I believe for us at the level of the executive, we work closely, together. So with the help of Mr. Njai, he is basically the architect of this department. It was during his time that they transformed the PAU to this department to ensure that there is coordination within government, to ensure that there is delivery of programs and projects, and there is also coherence in policy within government. So basically I'll stop there, unless if you have questions, but that is the Department for Strategy, Policy and Delivery. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Honorable members, do you have any questions for him?
Capture and priorities. It's not boils down to capacity building and coordination.
In fact, I think
Collaboration of our engagement, we are going to do that because we are going to roll out as a committee. So this meeting is purposely just to have a briefing and then we have an understanding of how the institution, department, and agencies are operating. Our next one will be rolled out. As we said, the Committee on Health is already rolled out. The local government are also going. So we will also be doing something like that. Our next activities will be from July to October. So we'll be rolling out, and then some of these things where we need the capacity building and also coordination will all come in. So, yeah. So the report will also show all the key areas that we want.
Is it Mr. Gomez?
Yes.
Gomez, yes. Do you have anything to?
Not much. Maybe I can just say a few things. When you asked about some of the challenges that we face in implementing the National Development Plan, one thing I want to highlight is with regards to the linkage between the plan and the budget. We have observed over the years that sometimes there is a bit of a disconnect between the plan and the budget, and we think that we feel that the National Assembly has a role to play in this because the budgets are approved at the National Assembly level. So when the Ministry of Finance presents the budget at the National Assembly, we feel that it is the role of the National Assembly to kind of look at the priorities of the government and be able to see whether the budgets are speaking to the priorities of the government. So basically, this is something that I wanted to add. Yeah.
I think I wanted to add one thing on top of that. It was part of the thing this year we want to do. Right now, our department is tasked to come up with a cabinet paper. Over the years, when the president goes out, people request certain things from the executive. So we feel like, just as he said, we want to make sure instead of the PB, I don't know, they call it the PBB, we want to make sure that it's practicalized. And the one way to do that is for the government to make sure that what people are requesting on the ground become the basis of the budget. Because that's the priority of the people. And we are there to solve the priority of the people. So under the new Ministry of Public Service, we're trying to work with the minister to ensure that the next budget cycle, we will make sure that some of those things are captured in the budget. It might not be everything, but we have to start developing that culture of putting the priority of our people in the budget, so that people see themselves as the people that are driving the budget instead of having the same recurring expenditures that we see in the national budget. So those are things I think is a very valid point, and I think we are working towards ensuring that cabinet approves that.
Yes, Honorable, with your kind permission, I just wanted to ask a question in order to set light. Can I? Yes, thank you very much. With regards to the Sustainable Development Goals, these are global goals that are very critical to the national development and critical to the committees of the National Assembly. So what is the linkage between, because looking at the national budget is program-based budgeting, so the linkage between the Sustainable Development Goal and the budget, and how far are you ready to assist the MPs in capacity in order to able to look at the budget and scrutinize, these sustainable development goal agendas within the budget lines? It's very important because many a time you talk to MPs about sustainable development goals, it's like they need more, understanding in the area of sustainable development goals. And if we fail to achieve these goals, it's like we will not move as a country. So.
No, Follow will come in here. But I think the whole idea, like Follow said, is about capacity building. Because, for example, if we talk about the Ministry of Health, its basic mandate relates to a particular SDG. You have a whole SDG goal on what? On health. Initially, it used to be mainly health of women and children, but now it's health at what? At all levels. If you look at the ministries of education, you have a whole goal on what? On education. And internationally, in many developing countries, what happens is like you don't have separate implementation arrangements for the sustainable development goals. They do it through their national development plans. So if we have what? If we are able to interact, and like Paulo is suggesting, having capacities built and strengthened around the sustainable development goals, we should be able to use that, our understanding, to be able to scrutinize the extent to which they've been mainstream in our national development plans, because ideally, national development plans, those are the priorities that we have agreed on as a country, including, like we're saying, we had consultations up to the ward level. And those are the priorities that should inform resource allocation through the budget. So if we are able to have that kind of link from our internationally agreed development agenda through our national development plans, and that feeds into our budgetary process, then that should at least strengthen our financing of an implementation of this internationally agreed development agenda. So I think it's all about, because like Honorable Barrow has said, it's all about making sure, because capacity building cannot be what? It cannot be one-off. It has to be sustained, and it has to be a process. And at some point, we're talking about this agenda 2030. Beyond 2030, maybe another internationally agreed development agenda will be agreed by what? The global community, and we have to continue building capacity. Well, it's a matter of comprehensively maybe developing a kind of capacity building initiative where we'll be able to interact, have good understanding of what the sustainable development goals are, but how they also influence our planning processes and how they should ultimately influence resource allocation. So that at the end of when the budget is executed or is approved, we know it is going to contribute towards the attainment of certain development goals, that's the SDGs, and even how our budget also contributes to even SDG 17, that's international partnerships, mobilizing other resources up and above government core resources, that's the budget that is approved, and the loans that are ratified here, etc. So I think it's good that we've been summoned to this place, because when I saw the invitation and I saw someone, I say, but I was told that the language of what? That's the language of the National Assembly. It's a matter of us working together, because we are in the service of the people. And all of us, our ultimate objective is to see improvement in the lives and livelihood of our people. Today we are serving in the public sector. Tomorrow, first and foremost, we are citizens. And at the end of the day, we go back to becoming ordinary citizens and not in the service. So the more we try as much as possible during our active life in the public sector to be useful and to improve the lives and livelihoods of our people, the better for all of us.
Yeah, maybe that clarification. I think a lot of Gambians are worried about the word using the word summons.
Yes.
The powers of the committee are derived from Section 109 of the Constitution. and our powers is equivalent to the High Court. So that's why we're using the language of the Constitution to summon our people to come and answer to what we are doing. But that's the language of the Constitution.
So it's a limitation.
And Section 100 and Section 102 of the standing order. So that's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chairman, can
Okay.
you go? Yes, no, this is just a short question. Thank you so much, Chairman. I'm sorry for coming late. I'm not able to participate that much because I came late, so I was like, things were far ahead of me. You talked about like the popularization of the Sustainable Development Goal that you are working on by engaging the Kajalamos and going to the grassroots. One thing I did not hear, that is the participation of MPs. These are people that have close contact with the people. And I think they can play a great role as far as sensitization is concerned. So I don't know how you take that. Do you have any plans for engaging MPs from different areas, different constituencies, to be part and parcel of this sensitization? Because, as you said, it's a collaborative work. We cannot do it in isolation. So this is something that I did not hear. Maybe I came late. So
I think basically we referenced that initially, even as part of the biennial process and as part of the national development, the initial process, we wanted that we know opportunity to interact with National Assembly members. But like I said at the beginning, this was at a time when National Assembly elections were on the table and the National Assembly was dissolved, so it wasn't possible to meet the National Assembly. What we did then was try and make sure at least let's have the inter-party committee and meet them and brief them. But as part of the planning process and also the implementation of the SDGs, like Afalu is saying, we cannot afford to miss the opportunity of closely interacting with National Assembly members because they are closer to the people than we are, and they're always with their constituents and all that. So that all these things we're talking about, the Sustainable Development Goals and our National Development Plan, they become what? The champions at the grassroots, so that they're able to help us communicate and also interact and help people to know what their roles are in terms of being active participants in the process, but also beneficiaries of that process. Yes, so we would make sure that we work together to make sure that we strengthen this engagement.
Thank you.
thank you, Chairman.
Yes, I just wanted to add to what Elijah has said. I think maybe you missed it at the beginning, but of course we're saying that the participation of parliamentarians in the implementation of the SDGs is crucial. I always say in my common job that it is only parliamentarians who can legitimately say my people, because they are directly elected by the people. So if you want to address the needs of the people, the only way you can do it is through parliamentarians. So, and of course, we have done quite a lot of work in this area, and as Honorable Barrow was saying, we want to revise this campus on the SDGs, where we will create awareness, sensitize, and build capacity for within the National Assembly. Because the engagement of the National Assembly on the SDGs is not just this committee, but this committee will have to take the lead.
Yes.
We need every National Assembly member to be actively engaged in the implementation of the SDGs. As you were saying, we need to look at how our National Development Plan translate our internationally agreed agenda, the SDGs, Vision 2063, etc., into a National Development Plan. That's one. The second is we need to look at how the budget translates that National Development Plan into action. We all have a planning background, and one of the things that we planners say is a plan is as good as the resources available to implement it. If you have a plan and you don't have the resources, you cannot implement that plan. So when you review the budget, it should be in line with the plan. But I think this is an engagement we have to plan maybe in the medium and long term. Engage with the committee, build capacity, institutional support so that we can rally the entire National Assembly to be part of this. But I agree with you, we cannot do anything on the NDP without the parliamentarians, because you are the representatives of the people. You are the go-between for us to understand the people when we come to you. I'm sure you're from your constituency not long ago. You know what is happening there. People come to you and tell you about what their issues are. Whatever we talk here, you also take back to your people.
Sure.
So you are the interlocutor between the people and everybody else, both ways. So your engagement cannot be downplayed. It is critical and it is crucial, and that's why we are here, to make sure that how smoothen this relationship and support each other.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I'm sorry for taking you back.
That's all right. It's okay. So, in the absence of any further questions, I would like to adjourn this meeting. Thank you once again, Mr. Njai, Mr. Fadera. Is it Lou? Lum and Gomez. Thank you for taking time off your schedules to come and answer our summon. I think that's when we write back again to invite you, so someone you please understand that we are inviting you. So it's been a very fruitful engagement. We have heard what you said. We have also taken note of the recommendations that you have made, including, of course, the collaboration between this committee or the National Assembly at large and your various institutions that you represent here. I think it's absolutely important that we collaborate and we work together to deliver development to the people of the Gambia. And of course, it is understood that we cannot do that in isolation. We need to work together. And I think Honorable Barrow will help this committee to follow up on some of the issues that you mentioned here. The one he said Daniel is responsible. Yes, Honorable, we will rely on you to please help us to follow up on those issues so that we strengthen the relationship and the coordination between us so that we get to where we want to go to. So on that note, I want to thank you very much once again for your time.
Motion to adjourn then to 14th.
Okay.
When the next meeting is scheduled, so we need to move a motion.
The next meeting is scheduled for the 14th of July. Can somebody move a motion that we adjourn this meeting to the 14th of July?
Yeah.